was living a lie. In the darkness, I was scared of the light. With no direction, I was running away. Step by side, enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride.
My name is Benedictus Ombuna from Invergrove Heights, and I'm here to talk about my tragedy. I was a single parent trying to raise my son, and one day I walked over to the bus stop and my son was not there. And I did everything possible, called police, went to school. Eventually I was told that by a court order, without notice, my son had been given to somebody else. And from there on, it was a big fight. Miss MacDonald here helped me out. And after a bill of over $50,000, the judge reversed the wrongful custody order, dismissed the case, and removed himself for his errors. But at that time, the damage had been done to my child, my family, and that damage was irreversible and not repairable. And since then, we have been involved through Family Innocence Project to make sure that nobody else goes through what I went through. And that child of mine that was taken was my last child. And according to my custom, where I originally come from, your last born is the one who makes sure that during the days of your need, he is there for you, or she is there for you. And I don't have that now. And to me, I don't know, I have no life now. Whatever I had has been taken. And I pray that this committee will pass this bill, SF 1402. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So that's Benedictus Ombuna, and I remember I told you he told you the judge reversed the order. The judge said, case dismissed, there's no jurisdiction. All orders are, he basically said, oopsie. Vacate the orders. I was like Perry Mason. I had this order. I went to his little apartment, bringing it to him. You got your son back finally. Well, then what happened was the attorneys served him with proper third-party custody papers, personally served him, and the battle started again in court. What happened was this woman didn't have standing when she started. She was like a great aunt, but because she had had Benedictus's son for so long, all of a sudden she said, I've had custody for a year, and now I have standing. And the battle started all over again. So he continued not to be able to see his son. And this is why circles is so important. And what we start with this, like how I demonstrated. We're in the circle, and then what I've learned, I do it every time now, is we do what's called a listening exercise, okay? So we split people up into two groups. So find someone in the room that you don't know. Have that PowerPoint in front of you and sit by the person. Pick a partner is what I'm saying. And you're going to be thinking about a conflict that you have, but not a conflict with anybody in the room. So that's how circle practices go. And even when we're doing circle, and Luis has been involved in a couple of them, the couple, usually it's a couple, we don't have them talk to each other the first time. I mean, this was an experiment. I'm like Dominic Barter experimenting in the room, how you do it with families. But what we've done is we don't have them talk to each other the first time. We have them talk to me. I share a conflict back. But at some point down the road, you just put them together. And it's just unbelievable what can occur when they're finally hearing and listening to each other. So this is part of the listening, part of the hearing, part of what Dominic has taught me. So pick a partner, and what you're going to do is one of you is going to be the speaker, and one of you is going to be the listener. Then we're going to switch. Okay? We are going to do this for 3 minutes. Okay? So the speaker is going to talk for 3 minutes, or not talk. You are going to listen for 3 minutes, or listen to silence. We are going to not interrupt. And I'm going to give you the 4 things that people do, the 4 basic things that all of us do. We're not going to jump in with advice, because I know we'll have some. We're not going to bottom line it like, been there, done that, here's what you got to do. We're not going to, we're just going to listen, okay? Listen as intently as we can. And then I'll ask you, so for 3 minutes, because you've all never done this. I've done hundreds of listening exercises. So I've picked this one. This one is a good one, okay? This is the only one you have to know when you're doing this, in my view. And Louise is nodding her head because she's watched this in action, okay? And I have a timer here, a 2-minute timer. Pair up. Anybody need somebody to pair with?
Excuse me.
Yes.
The suggestion is that we model it first to everybody.
Okay, does everybody have a partner? Okay, pick who's going to talk about their conflict first. And what I try to tell people, it could be anything. Here I want to, let's figure out a good one for each other, right, to help. Everything's confidential, but when I do this with people, I say it could be something in traffic. It could be, because people can't come up with conflicts. It's amazing. With somebody not in the room, because of course their conflict is right in the room, right? So, or your kids, or your employer, or your any, it's really a relational conflict, but it could really literally be how your day's going, a traffic. We've used being at the DMV as the post office. Okay, so any type of conflict is coming up for you. So A's going to start. You're going to talk for 2 minutes. B's going to listen intensely, and don't interrupt. And again, even if you can't say anything, this is just important for you to know, I mean, in the class, because people will start all of a sudden a conversation. When you're in the exercise, I do try to make it an exercise so they get that they're not listening for the 2 minutes. And they get that when they are listening and there's complete silence and they're saying, I don't know what to say, that they're still listening, right? So somebody is just not knowing what to say. Usually what happens to me is I can't think of a conflict, right? I'm sitting there in the 2 minutes going, and that's okay too. There's no right or way to express a conflict, okay? So I'm going to start the timer. Go.
Restaurant because I was really changing and not that anything bad is happened. I'm just trying to grasp this. Yeah, he
Okay, stop. So, I'm going to ask you, how did that feel? And let's start with the talkers first. And if anybody wants to comment on how it felt to just talk and be listened to. Any comments on that?
Well, it's very easy for me to talk. So I could talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. I just could. I could have went much beyond. I could have went way beyond the 2 minutes. So anyhow, but very easy for me to talk. It's great to have just someone sit there and listen. And it's something that we all don't experience very much. So this is a really beneficial exercise. I'm just very grateful for it. So hopefully y'all felt the same. It was really good. Thank you.
It was nice to hear what she had to say, not to go into what she said, but the things that I normally hear are not coming from the things that she was just, opening up to me. It was her being a mother, and that's what I'm here for, to help people be a mother. And it's nice to hear from someone who's actually a mom, caring about what's going on in their household.
I guess what I thought was really interesting is that I had a little bit more emotion for when I was listening than when I was speaking. And everybody's stories are so very interesting, and I, actually wanted to intercede and ask questions and, find out more, and couldn't. So that was an interesting experience too, just having to sit and just say nothing. So I guess that was my...
I felt very similar, and actually Michelle had to stop me because I was talking when I was supposed to be listening, and I found that really hard to just sit and listen, and I thought I was a good listener, and I guess because I was actively listening, like I wanted to ask questions and hear more about that issue. But then when I stopped talking and just started listening, it was interesting to see how you progress with your own story. And I might have had questions about things, but you moved on to something else. And it was like seeing, because I sat and was quiet, I could see what was important to you, because that's what you focus on rather than what I was focusing on and having questions about.
And I felt like when I was in the position of listening that as she was explaining her conflict, that she was actually coming up with her own answers to her conflict. Because it just seemed like as she was talking, it was like the answers were just coming to her just by releasing that and just being able to talk about it to somebody that was willing to sit and listen to her.
Yeah.
I'm just going to make one request that Gail not speak before me because we kind of are on the same wavelength and thinking the same. But I don't know if this is a thing, but I feel like I'm an interactive communicator. So when someone's talking to me, it's okay for me to talk back to them and we go back and forth. But people communicate differently and process differently. So it's really hard for me to just sit and listen because that's how I communicate. But I see how just being quiet allows the other person, because if you interrupt some people, like I know you've all had these conversations, they'll just stop and they'll be like, oh, I can't remember what I was going to say or what I was going to do. So it allows you to freely communicate, which I think is nice. Very nice.
As a psychologist, just listening, some people need prompting and reframing so you know what they're saying. I think this may be dead. And otherwise, when I was listening here, it was easy to follow because you're very organized in your thinking. And so some people process by thinking. Some people need a little reframing to understand what they're saying. So it's not always silence works best as a listener.
For me, I find, and I've had a lot of practice doing this, but I know kind of what I'm like. which is an interactive communicator. And I, with practice, fall into this model of being, not even a model, but a way of being when I'm in circle or when I'm in an experience like this. And so I know for all of you with practice, you will have that experience. However, to be honest about what's going on in my head. So as I became trained as a mediator, and in the state of Minnesota, Rule 114 neutral, that gets to be on these rosters throughout the state of Minnesota for whatever it's worth. There was a training experience that I had that was so powerful, which was, imagine we're having this conversation or listening, receiving, or speaking, but there's a person behind each chair that's actually responding based on what's going on in our heads. So often, Mr. Psychologist, you know this, someone may say something, but really what's going on up here is entirely different. And so I've never forgotten that training as a way of being in the work that I do, that what we are sharing may or may not be really what we're thinking. And then as a listener, I'm a fixer. So my friend here had pretty intense conflicts. I know it was written all over my face, you know, to remain, I wasn't neutral because they were pretty big. But I noticed that I wanted to go and offer advice. And sometimes holding space allows you to reflect on your own story and figure out how it even sounds to you, right? So that's what I wanted to share. So there's kind of a multi-leveled layer of experiences for me in that listening exercise for me.
In response to the interactive listeners, I'm realizing that it's probably more difficult for that person than the person as, for me, the ADD introvert, because as soon as maybe I'm being prompted, that allows me to step back and let the listener do the work that I should be doing as the speaker. And I just realized that the power in, thank you, Michelle, for saying, if you can't think of something, you can sit in silence. And that's probably all practically painful for the interactive listener because they want to keep it going. But that might be more powerful because that gives the person time to be really processing even more. And I loved what you said, coming up with your own answers. But it's probably painful. I want to help. And that time will come.
So we have a handout I'm looking for, scrambling to look for. It's the only handout you're going to need to give to people. Okay, I'm just trying to, like I told you in my family law practice, I've used the same simple handouts for years. I modify them a little bit, but it talks about the blocks to listening. And I've seen many articles written on it, treatises, and all of this. But there's 4 blocks to listening. I can only think of 3, and I've passed out this handout a zillion times. But the biggest one is interrogating. Like, somebody will be talking. Dee Dee does this to me all the time. I'll be talking, and she'll go, "What color was the car he was driving?" And it disrupts, right? Because we want to know. We're on a different track. We're like, this is a really interesting story, and or you'd start advising, well, oh, that happened to me once, and guess what I did to, it went so bad. Or you say, oh, That's an easy conflict. And then the other one is you're already listening. You already know the answer. You already know exactly what this person's going to say. And my favorite is, oh, I've heard this before. How can you hear something in the past that's being spoken right now, right? How can you hear something again? Maybe you heard something similar, but similar is not the same. So we're all just not, we're not communicating. And what you'll find is family innocence advocates, and I've taught people this, or as you're sitting there listening, I'm a lawyer, right? So they usually look to me in that box. And Lori was with me in a conversation once. Oh, what a doozy. She calls family innocence. She's gotten her kids taken away. Her father got murdered. She got her kids taken away because the kid got bitten by a dog. She's in the system. And then she doesn't even tell me that story. She basically says, and Lori remembers this and the look on my face after about a minute, can you get me my kids back? Can you get me my kids back? And normally, if I was going to be honest, no. Can't get you your kids back. It's one of those cases that so instead what the technique is you let them keep talking. I've learned this. You have to let them keep talking because the minute you interrupt, they'll say, you're not listening to me. And at the same time, they want advice. So one of the tricks that I use is, I don't even think I've told everybody this trick, because I am great at giving advice, bottom lining it in my head, interrogating, like, I want to know the facts. I want to know the facts. Is I pinch my finger so they don't even know. And I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, I want to interrupt. I have so much to say. And I will tell you, they do solve their own conflicts when they get to talk about them. It is flippin' amazing. I can't even believe it. I mean, they talk. And Tom did this with me once on this call. On and on. They talk. I had this gentleman call. He wanted me to sue the county attorney who child support, and I'm not supposed to be paying it, and finally they dropped the case and it needs to be sued, and I heard you sue judges and you sue attorneys, and he went on and on and on and on, and I couldn't get a word in edgewise, which I'd be jumping in with words edgewise. I'd be interrupting and everything. So Tom came in my office. This guy's still talking. I put him on mute. We were doing some work. I'm listening. Tom leaves the office. He's not giving me a word. He wants to get his story out. These people want to get their story out. And then finally, he stopped and he goes, "What do you think?" And what was coming up for me that moment was, I said, "You are awesome." I just said, "I think you're awesome." He had been through this long, drawn-out thing where he was on disability and his wife had to pay his child support, and he still owes this, and he's paid to it, and he finally got it resolved. And I just said, "You're awesome." And this guy, his name was David, was just like, "Thank you, you're such a good listener." Right? He's like, "Thank you." And he's writing me going, "Oh, you're the real deal." And oh my gosh. And I didn't do anything but listen. Listening is so important. People we don't have advice to give. So now I'm going to ask you about talking and how it felt when you were talking to actually be listened to and uninterrupted. Except Gail over there, I caught her interrupting, but how did that feel? And who wants the talking piece?
Let's see. As far as talking goes, I think I'm pretty much a personality where I want all the details. And when I'm talking and I talk out the details, then I think that I'm done talking. So, but really, then you need to get to the feeling of what you're feeling about the details, because I can tell all the details just fine. But so that, I guess that's what comes up with the I can solve my own issues if I can actually feel the issue versus just talking about the issue. So it's good that I struggle sometimes with other people that don't listen very well, and then you can't get what you want to say, and then you get really frustrated because it's like my husband and I only have 15 minutes to talk. That's our time, and when he goes off on a tangent and I'm trying to say something and he's interrupting all the time, it's very frustrating. So to actually have somebody that's actually listening is a wonderful feeling.
Oh, somebody said, I just want to remember, I'm writing things on the board so I don't remember. We are not neutral. Neutral is a fallacy. Nobody's neutral. Are you kidding me? Those judges up there? I had one judge. In fact, I got in trouble for this. I said to the judge in open court, this was my big lie, I said, "You have not been impartial since day one." I said that. Day one was a lie. Probably had some impartiality somewhere along the lines, although I didn't think so. But that was my lie to the tribunal that I got in trouble for, that one sentence. You can all read about it. What Dominic Barter told me is multi-partial. That's the right word. And Judge Peterson said multi-partial. That's the right word. And Judge Peterson said when I brought that up, and he had taken Dominic Barter's course too, he said, "Oh, that means we love everybody in the room?" Okay. Multi-partial. Neutrality, and I've been to courses on this, is not a good word. It's not the right word. It's kind of a fake word. So anybody else on talking?
I actually thought that this wasn't working for a bit. Otherwise, I would have shot this right over to you. I guess my feeling when I was speaking is I'm kind of an introvert, but when I'm speaking, it's a release. It's kind of a release of emotion, and then I felt more of a peace after I spoke. And so that's what I have to say.
Something that I experienced was just knowing that I had 3 minutes. It kind of like gave me space to like breathe, and like I knew I had time and I didn't have pressure to either keep talk until I was interrupted, or like I didn't have a fear of being like silenced or like shut down. It was like, oh, I have space to talk. And so I think it was really powerful. I think someone was talking about creating space or holding space. And that phrase to me, it like really resonated because it's like very powerful, because it's hard to remember to do that. But when someone does it for you, it feels so like loving. Like they don't have to even say anything or even know or understand what you're saying. But like I feel like as long as I feel like that space is held for me, it's like, oh wow, that's like all I needed. Like I feel so loved and supported, and so yeah.
And on the flip side of that, 3 minutes as an introvert, it's like, it's only 3 minutes. I can commute for 3 minutes, it'll be done. Which then having that space does have freedom and grows.
And someone here talked about editing. I think it was Karen, who, and I have to do that in court. I have to edit and say, on this day this happened, and on this day this happened, and on this day this happened, and be real succinct. We shouldn't have to edit when we're communicating. It should just be flowing. But we have this editing capability. And think about this. It's because we don't have the words for what we're feeling. Think about a little kid. I was with my little nephew, 3 years old, and he's with his dad, and he's reading a book. and he wants to read the book again. And his dad says, "Oh, we already read that book." And he's and I'm just watching what's happening. And so he sees me just listening, and then he comes over and brings me the book. Now his dad left, and I'm like, "Oh, you want to read the book?" And he's 3 years old, and he's going, it was a very complicated book for a 3-year-old, I'll tell you. And he's going, read the book. I thought I was done. I want to read the book. Read the book. We read the book 20 times, okay, until he was done reading the book. I'm not even kidding. We went into his bedroom because there were things in the book to pick out in the bedroom. You know, and I thought, oh, I'll do something different. We'll pick out the window in a real bedroom, not in the book. And he's like, "Book!" And he read it over and over and over again. He didn't get it out. Little kids don't know how to communicate. That's why they cry. That's why people raise their voice. This is what Dominic Barter told me. People raise their voice because they think they're not being heard. Little kids, and the parents are just like trying to hear them, but they don't have the words. We don't have the words. I'll bet somebody might know here how many words we actually have. Not to mention, to communicate, we don't have that many words. Not to mention, now there's all these, it's not a melting pot, but all these people coming in that have different ways of communicating that we don't even know what they're hearing when we're talking. Moving our hands could be bad. A handshake could be bad. So we have to start hearing heart to heart, and that's what we do when we facilitate these. We help them to hear heart to heart instead of the story. What the heck is a circle? She doesn't hear me, she doesn't listen to me. Doing a listening exercise, that's a waste of time. The two circles conflate, and your story about what happened becomes what happened. Circles are complicated.
That bike is sexy. Growing up, I was living a lie. In the darkness, I was scared of the light. With no direction, I was running away. I tried to cover that I'm losing my mind. Beginning, it's a new way of life. Another chapter, why not give it a try? This hopeful journey needs an open mind to discover the treasure inside. Never see the truth until you look past the lies. Mother Nature is waiting for you to arrive. Step by side, step by side.
So Michelle is going to leave us with the Family Innocence theme song. We know it's going to be catching on everywhere. So take it away, Michelle.
And I won't have my husband Tom sing with me this time.
Or me.
You guys are all blessed.
Okay. Camera. Start spreading the bird, beginning today. We want to be no part of it, the family court. The bird is the word. It's flying away to make a brand new start of it. No family court. We want to wake up in a household where we can sleep instead of fearing a judge ready to peep. These family court blows are melting away. We will get to the heart of it with no delay. If we can do it here, we'll do it everywhere. No family court, no family court. One more line. If it is not a crime, we are not doing time in family court. No